So look, another lab guy came, right? Because I've been talking about how these people in these labs are working with the police to falsify, lab results, right? So they can get convictions. So they send they send another dude, another lab dude, just walk past me, and didn't even unless they're trying to test my memory, also, right? But anyway, they sent another lab guy to come. He just came in. He just came up the stairs, came over here, looked at one of the boxes, and then turns around and gets back into his vehicle, walks back into his vehicle. Right? Oh, yeah. When I tell you the reason why, again, when you look at, particularly in California, I think the TI in California, she was talking about in Orange County, California, where you had the police department literally uh, listening to confidential conversation between lawyer and client, right? And then they were like, "Well, how did they know about this what we talked about, this topic? You talk about anybody else?" They're like, "Nope." And then they realized what was happening, that these people were breaking the law. So when I talk about these people who are in law enforcement, because of the position that they're in, they are the criminals, and they can be criminals, break the law, and get away with it because they work within the law. That what is the best place for criminals to hide? Right? It's in the criminal justice. It's in the criminal injustice system. Right? Right? You know what I'm saying? So you gotta understand what it is that they do. Like I said, when you understand the system is in its totality, right? It is the only chance you have at not being railroaded, right, by those in position of authority and power who are uh, engaging in criminal acts against certain members of the civilian population, right? Right. When you look at the Black Panther movement, when you look at uh, uh, the MOVE organization, when you look at the Nation of Islam, right, how they've been attacked. Well, you don't think that they're not in our community attacking us also, as young black men and women? They've already told us what it is that what did they say? According to Pro, is to do what? Is to infiltrate the black community and to identify those with leadership qualities and to discredit them, right? And to control them. And if they can't control them, is to destroy them. All right. Then I posted a video where you had a police captain, after they wrongfully detained a 12-year-old child, right? What did he say? He said that, it is our job to control them, because as they get older, if we don't control them, you know what I'm saying? So imagine a black police chief saying that about white children. Do you think the white community will go for that? No. But because we as black people, we are defeated in mind. We hear these things and we don't think twice about it. We don't get upset about it. But they sure as hell, white people will sure as hell get upset if it was a black chief said that about some little white girl that he detained. Right? And again, they detained the wrong person. They detained a child. Right? They were looking for a grown woman. You understand? So we tend to overlook these things because, like I said, we have a defeated mindset. And once you recognize that, you can change it. And this is why they want to continue us to be asleep and not be awakened. Right? So as long as they keep you in religion, you're always going to be asleep. You're always going to be a sheep looking for a shepherd to guide you. And that shepherd is Jesus. But Jesus ain't guiding you in any good way. Right? So you may think because you're in a certain profession, you may own a house, you may own a car, right? Okay, so what happened to the other believers who believe in Jesus and don't have what you have, right? Then you look down at them because you think that your God highly favors you, right? But then another person who will come and say to you, "No, God highly favored me over you because I got more than you." See, so our value has been based on what? Monetary things, the things we obtain. That's our value. It's not within. So religion makes you look on the outside, whereas the African spiritual system makes you look at the inside. don't get me wrong. We look at the outside too, but we understand that that there is a connection. So what if in your Bible it tells you the kingdom of heaven is within you? Why are you looking for it in the sky? Right? If in the Bible, in John, I forgot what chapter it says, didn't I say to you that ye are gods? So why are we looking for a God outside of us? Right? When it tells you that we are our own gods. At least that's what they said. I don't like to use that word because, but in certain contexts, I use it. Right? I prefer the word netter and netterus. So the netterus are the children of nature. So all the elements, right, are children of nature. You and I are children of nature, right? But we become creators when we do what? When we create life. When we have children, then we become netterus, and our children becomes. Then we became netters, and our children become netterus. Okay. So I hope that clarifies certain things, right? So we don't look for no God outside of us. When we talk about our ancestors, because we understand that in our DNA resides our ancestors. And like I said, you look at science, and science, what did they tell you, right? That our DNA contains memories of our ancestors, right? See, religion makes you disconnect yourself from your ancestors. So you have no one to guide you except for your so-called God and Jesus. And then you look at your life. Is it positive, right? Is it uplifting, right? Are you living, or are you just getting by, right? You know what I'm saying? So then when you see some Negropeans, they're like, well, I'm in abundance, but it's only temporary. It's only temporary. That's why they talk about seasons, right? They have to tell you that you're in the season of abundance, because they know it's nothing. They have conditioned you to not have long term sustainability, whether it be economic stability, right, mental stability, health wise, right. They know that they are conditioning you, and the conditioning that they have us in, not just psychologically but biologically as well, right, that our health will fade faster than other groups of people. Right? They know this. They understand this. You don't, because you want to believe in something that's outside of you, something that you don't have any concept of. So when you talk about God, how you know God? How you know God, right? Because a lot of y'all don't even know God. A lot of y'all talking about God is not the author of confusion, and God is always on time, and God is always good, right? When in the Bible, God tells you that I am not good all the time, right? The Bible will tell you, God will tell you in the Bible, I create evil, right? So in order to create evil, you must have evil within you, right? What did God says? God says, like I said, God wanted His creation to be what? Dumb and stupid, right? That's why He forbid Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, or what they call the tree of good and evil, right? And when they ate from it, what did God say? He says, look, man has become just like us. Man has become filled with what? Knowledge, awareness. Right? This is why Adam and Eve was hiding. All right? So, all right, I'm just looking fast. Anyway, all right, think about it. Think about it. When a guy asked, where are you? And they were hiding. He's like, why did you hide? Because, they didn't have a conscious mind. They didn't have an awakened mind, and a mind of awareness. So when they hide, because they wasn't hiding because they're naked, right? They were hiding because they needed some form of shelter, some form of of dwelling, right? They were hiding behind way some bushes. Yeah, maybe they were having sex. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Who knows, right? So then, so again, and God says what? Look, man has become just like us. You see, we keep skipping these words. When God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness." Our, and us, right? Man has become just like us, right? And then we tend to look past the part that there's actually two creation of man and woman in Genesis. There's Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Two different creation of man and woman. One where he created man and woman at the same time, and another in Genesis 2, he took a rib from man to create woman. See, we don't think about these things, right? So they'll focus on the second creation of man in Genesis 2 and skip past the first, right? Just as how, again, I would show you how your God is very jealous, and he says, "I'm a jealous God," right? But then, isn't one of the sins jealousy, right? So God can sin, God can murder, God can impregnate another man's wife, right? God can do all these things that He tell you and I not to do in the Bible. This is why Christians do the same thing, because what? It's about leadership. If you have corrupt leadership, you're going to be corrupted. It's very rare you're going to find someone who will not be corrupted, particularly when you're working in certain career fields where there's rapid corruption. Okay. All right. Now let's look at this now. In the story of the Tower of Babel, all right, God saw that man was building great cities, right, and they were building structures to reach the heavens. And God, what did God said? God said, since man can do all this because they all speak the same language, so they understand each other, so they can give instruction to each other. What he said, what he's going to do? He's going to go and destroy the Tower of Babel, and that he did. And what he did, he said, "I'm going to confuse their tongue." So you telling me that God is not the author of confusion, and in your very own Bible, God tell you many times how He confuses people, right? How He confuses people. So again, do you truly understand your God? Do you truly read and understand your Bible? All right. Now I forgot to mention this, but when I was leaving, Pam was like, "You did this to me." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? What I did to you?" I said, "What I did to you, Pam? You did this to me. What I did to you? Your foot?" I'm like, first you try to insinuate that I hurt her foot, right? Again, lies that they tell, right? The lies. I said, "Your foot?" She was like, "I said, I know you're not talking about your foot because that had nothing to do with me." And so when you confront them on it, right? Then they will then what they'll do, right? Because now that they see that you're not, you're not being, they're not manipulating you into not saying anything to try to make you look guilty. You know what I'm saying? So when you're confronting them, then all of a sudden they change their tune. Then she be like, "No, I'm talking about my pipes." I'm like, "What pipe you talking about?" "Oh, the kitchen," because she doesn't want to go downstairs and do laundry, right? Because the laundry is close to her. I said, "Hey," I said, "Listen, there's an elevator. You're not walking anywhere except walking to the elevator, going downstairs, and the laundry room is not far, right?" So I was like, "Listen," she's like, "On my foot." I was like, "Listen, that's not my concern. Okay, you keep that to yourself." Right? And then I left. Right? But again, this is what they do. They are being manipulated into manipulating us, right? So they can control us using coercive persuasion means. So, like I said, for my brothers, if these women, if you're sleeping with them, if they are part of a cult, they will try to manipulate you. They will try to insinuate some things about you in order to control you, right? Particularly if you are not a religious believer, right? They will use these things to try to manipulate you into joining their death cult, which is called Christianity. And if you don't join, then they will use them and their handlers, their dark triad leaders in position of authority, right? Will try to do what? Remove you from the society because they don't want you influencing other people. They don't want you speaking the truth so other people will listen and understand what it is that's going on. All right? And we got to call them out on it. We got to call them out on it. We got to let them know that, hey, we're not going for this. All right? Because what's going to happen is that within the black community, black men and black women will find themselves on two extreme opposite ends. Just like you see in Congress, just like you see in politics, where you have the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, have now become so far extreme that there is no compromise taking place. All right, so you got to look at these things and understand that these things will trickle down into the society, particularly the black population, because the black population has always been targeted by white supremacy for destruction. All right, they'll always become targeted for destruction. All right, talk to you guys.